So today we're going to talk about critical pedagogy. I'm going to kind of go through it fast so that I leave some time for questions and discussion at the end. But basically what critical pedagogy is, well, just brief overview of critical theory from last week, idealized vision of society and have some sort of Marxist twist on it. And, constantly complaining, upset, you're never happy. You can see that out in the world about this idealized vision, and then also just be involved in social activism to bring it about. So critical pedagogy is basically putting critical theory to practice in education. And it's teaching students how to look through a critical theory lens in every single subject that they're taught. And that's being done in every public institution in this country right now. So in every subject too. So Paulo Freire is a Brazilian. He's the godfather of critical pedagogy. He became committed to the cause of educating the impoverished peasants of his nation and collaborating with them in pursuit of their liberation from oppression. He also goes on to talk about his belief in Marxism and anti-colonialist thinkers, which we hear a lot about now. He was influenced by Karl Marx. You know all these names, we've talked about them many times in the past. There is no neutral education. All education efforts must focus on the liberation of the oppressed. That's his philosophy. He was the author of Pedagogy of the Oppressed. It was a book that he wrote, third most cited book in the social sciences and humanities currently in education. Cites all these guys that we all know. Communist Tract about Marxist thought. So he believed education, as we traditionally know it, of learning by memory or routine before understanding a subject matter, is like educational banking system. The system teacher depositing information into students is oppressive, he believed. Teacher teaches people that they are part of a system that they're stuck in and can't control. The system of memorization, where the students are passive agents and the teachers are active agents, therefore the oppressor, that we have talked about in critical theory. So we know that memorization, this memorization method of teaching, going back hundreds of years, is traditional classical education, which has been the most effective form of educating students in terms of thinking independently, critical thinking, which is different than critical theory. And now you don't see that anywhere in our public education. Public education has completely gotten rid of classical education. They have basically gone to this critical pedagogy, thanks to Paulo Freire and these others, Dewey, Mans, and if you don't know these guys, look them up. You'll need therapy. Talk to Steve. Instead of teaching those to take responsibility as a way out of that situation, building up block by block, they teach them that they are oppressed and stuck. The only way to throw off the oppressor is to deconstruct the whole system. Obliterate the hierarchy built into the teacher-student relationship and make them equal and on a dialogical level. This goes into the oneism, twoism thing, which we've talked about, Joshua has talked about much, where you're making them equal with the teacher. So there's oneism instead of this twoism, or the teacher-student relationship, which we see in creation so much, the twoism. Use the subject to introduce critical theory concepts. So this is an example. The XY axis in algebra has been used now to show the relationships between social justice and the elimination of oppression. Okay, so this is how it's being stuck into math. Eurocentric oppression of the music world. White male composers. Rhythm and symmetry are oppressive. Tonality built into what sounds good is a Eurocentric perspective. So Henry Giraud is the father of critical pedagogy, in the United States. Yeah.
Could you give an example then of a neutral, what is a neutral education or neutral pedagogy?
I don't know if there is one.
Right.
No, I can't. So, yeah, it's either going to be something that glorifies God or something that's demonic, basically. So, Henry Giraud is the father of critical pedagogy in the United States. He's a disciple of Freire. They knew each other, I believe, at Harvard. He wrote Ideology, Culture, and the Process of Schooling based on Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Oh, now it's working. Professor Giraud begins to lay the theoretical groundwork for developing a radical pedagogy that connects critical theory with the need for social action in the interest of individual freedom and social reconstruction. This is a pivot point in education when there was a decision not to do the banking model education, banking meaning the teacher depositing information into the student. So dialogic means basically an ongoing dialogue between teacher and students. So the teacher elicits students' everyday common sense perspectives, engage with their developing ideas, and help them overcome misunderstandings. They taught the tools of the oppressors are anti-dialogical actions, conquest, manipulation, divide and rule, cultural invasion, and projection. So this is the critical theorists saying the oppressors teach the tools. These are their tools. When this is simply projection. The irony is these, we've studied critical theory in depth, this is exactly the tools that they use. You know, so their decolonization or deconstruction movement is really colonization of education and the institutions. That's what they're doing. That's what they've done, I should say. They need to make students realize a system of oppressing them is, need to make students realize the system is oppressing them, so they will become revolutionaries, rob them of the enjoyment of anything of beauty, must realize the true nature of their servitude. If they were happy, they are happy, then they have been brainwashed into thinking that they are happy. They've praised the revolutions in China and Cuba as going great. Realized violence wasn't working in the 1960s and 70s, Weather Underground, all these things. And so they decided to transition. So let's all become K through 12 activists. So the 5 pillars of education to infiltrate, to change a culture from within: religion, media, family, education, and law. And we see this so prevalent around us now. Invest in education, because this was the true door to unlock in order to change everything else in society along march through the institutions, which you're going to be talking about shortly, next week. So yeah, get the students from kindergarten, pre-K. This is why you want the government wants to see universal pre-K. Start infiltrating their minds from the earliest stages. And then, you train them for 12 years and then 16 years, including college. And they go out into the society and they become little activists, basically. And that's what we're experiencing now. So while many insist that critical theory is not being taught and the theory is taught as a curriculum in higher education only, the tenets and ideology are being taught throughout K through 12 in the United States. So this is an excerpt from an article. Yes, children are being taught critical race theory in K through 12 schools in the US by Raymond Burns. There's some links that I provide throughout the rest of this presentation. CRT did start out as a legal theory that was only taught in higher education, but it began to be developed into theory for use by K through 12 school teachers more than 25 years ago, with the 1995 publication of a landmark essay by 2 critical race theorists who were professors of education at the University of Wisconsin. The final section of their essay makes clear that for critical race theorists, the purpose of scholarship is political change. We align our scholarship and activism with the words of Marcus Garvey, who believed that the Black man was universally oppressed on racial grounds, The essay also makes clear that these theorists saw education as an ideological battlefield. They conclude with Garvey's famous admonition, "In a world of wolves, one should be armed." So in 2021, just last year, the National Association of Educators, one of the largest teachers unions in the country, approved a plan to integrate critical race theory into education in all 50 states. In the resolution, the union agreed publicly to convey its support for critical race theory, oppose restrictions in state legislatures, and to use schools to promote political activism. The delegates pledged to join with Black Lives Matter at school and the Zinn Education Project, this is Howard Zinn, to hold a national day of action on George Floyd's birthday, recruiting teachers to hold political demonstrations and teach lessons about structural racism and oppression. I guess the anniversary of his death is coming up. George Floyd, I don't know when his birthday is, but I would imagine that the anniversary of that death 2 years ago is coming up here in May. So you'll probably see a lot of this. Yeah. The resolution also promised to develop a study to critique empire, white supremacy, anti-Blackness, and ingenuity, I can't speak that word, ingenuity, racism, patriarchy, I can't read that word, capitalism, ableism, and anthropocentrism. That is adapting the most fashionable and intellectually bankrupt ideas from the universities for use in grade school classrooms. There's an article link to the NEA. So these are some examples of critical pedagogy in society now. I'll be going through some of these quickly. Math textbooks, many of you saw headlines last week about 48 or so math textbooks rejected in Florida because of critical race theory and other items, unapproved items that were incorporated in the math textbooks in Florida. So thankfully, they've rejected these books. 28 textbooks incorporated CRT, 14 unsolicited materials from SEL and mathematics. So we'll talk about SEL in a second. Common Core elements, which of course go back to 10, 12 years ago under Obama. In Evanston, Illinois, this is Northwestern University territory, just north of Chicago. They have now implemented radical gender curriculum for pre-K through 3rd grade. There's an article linked to that. In the 3rd grade, students are told that white European colonizers imposed a Western Christian ideological framework on racial minorities and forced two-spirit people to conform to the gender binary. Students are encouraged to break the binary, reject the system of whiteness. In kindergarten, the lessons on gender and trans identity go deeper. When we show whether we feel like a boy or girl or some of each, we are expressing our gender identity. The lesson begins. There are also children who feel like a girl or boy or neither. Yeah. The curriculum in Evanston is a perfect illustration of college-level queer theory, which has been taught for many years at the college level, transitioned into early elementary pedagogy. We all know about the Loudoun County, Virginia CRT boil over in the news the last year. It's not just Loudoun County, but it's all of Virginia, really, because the Virginia Board of Education, has endorsed all this anti-racism in education. So you can just go to the VA Board of Education website and see that, although some of that might have been taken down now that Youngkin has been elected governor there. California's National Equity Project. Pennsylvania Department of Education insists critical theory is not being taught, yet on their website they have links to racial and ethnic identity where they have recommended reading by CRT and CT proponents. So math in Seattle, it's another math example. Ethnic Studies Framework. The math outline talks about origins, identity, agency, power, oppression, action, resistance, liberation, and I printed this out. I printed this link out and I totally forgot it. I'll was going to read some of it to you, and it's just loaded with all of this garbage. And this is math. So you can go to it and see there from the link, see it for yourself. 6th grade education and music curriculum in New Jersey. The author suggests that critical theory is appropriate for music education as it empowers musicianship and enables music teachers to connect the music children experience in school with the music they hear outside. And then he just reinforces critical theory from the Frankfurt School and how it's appropriate in American education. So North Carolina, several districts there, and I'm sure it's more than just these two, gender support plan, where they have from kindergarten on identity checkboxes that the students are supposed to fill out. And they actually have stated policies on these in their schools that if a parent doesn't know, then the students are, or the teachers are supposed to take measures to keep this secret from the parents. It's sick. I didn't put this in here, but in the news recently, there have been gender identity closets discovered in California, where there's these closets they have of cross-dressing stuff. And if a student feels one way or another, then the teacher will take them to the closet and have them pick out what they want to wear. And the teachers don't, or the students or the parents don't know anything about this. So this is just the last couple of weeks that this has been discovered. In Austin, Texas, we believe the social emotional learning, this is SEL, is at the heart of equity-centered systems and structures. In an effort to grow this belief into a reality, the SEL and Cultural Proficiency and Inclusiveness Department has adopted a new statement of purpose for our work together. Our goal is to use and grow our social and emotional skills while creating brave, respectful, collaborative spaces to support all students, staff, families, communities through our district. CASEL, which I'll talk about in a second, defines transformative SEL as a process whereby young people and adults build strong, respectful, and lasting relationships. Let's see, learning to critically examine root causes of inequity. So these are all coined code words. By implementing SEL content and programming that intentionally weaves in social justice and empowers students as co-creators of equitable solutions, districts can truly emphasize students' cultural assets, voice, and agency. So what is CASEL? Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. At CASEL, we envision all children and adults are self-aware, caring, responsible, engaged, and lifelong learners who work together to achieve their goals and create a more inclusive, just world. CASEL is refining a specific form of SEL implementation that concentrates SEL practice on transforming inequitable settings and systems and promoting justice-oriented civic engagement, which we are calling transformative SEL. Through our long-term learning agenda and ongoing collaboration with practitioners, policymakers, and researchers, CASEL continues to deepening what we know about how to implement transformative SEL toward equitable learning opportunities and developmental outcomes. Together, we will continue learning through our collective commitment to continuous improvement. There's a link to that. More from CASEL, transformative SEL objectives. Authenticate partnering among students and adults with deep focus on sharing power and decision-making between young people, educators, families, and communities. So this is dialectical pedagogy that Fieri was talking about, bringing the students up and the teachers down to the same level. Academic content and integrates issues of race, class, and culture. Instruction that honors and makes connections to students' lived experiences. We heard about that a lot last week. And identities, and scaffolds learning to build an understanding of others' lived experiences. Enhancing and foregrounding social and emotional competencies needed for civic engagement and social change. So these are activists they're training, such as reflecting on personal and social identities, examining prejudices and biases, interrogating social norms, disrupting and resisting inequities, and co-constructing equitable and just solutions. Prioritizing students' individual and collective agency to take action for more just schools and communities. Focus on creating belonging and engagement for all individuals. Consistent with the pursuit of educational equity, We recently offered the concept of transformative SEL to reflect our interest in making explicit issues such as power, privilege, prejudice, discrimination, social justice, empowerment, and self-determination in the field of SEL. So, as if the Department of Education isn't enough, the CDC is now getting involved in education. The adverse childhood experiences in public education recently added categories: discrimination, community disruption, lack of opportunity, social capital, amongst many other categories that they've had already. Gender identity is not officially one yet, but give it time, it will be. Their solution is to divide children into groups through their whole school, whole community, and whole child program. And this is a website for that, you can see. Social emotional learning, SEL, change role of schools and teachers into institutions of therapy, divide students into groups of oppressors and oppressed, and they intervene in these 10 key areas. And if you look at all these areas, there is no room. I mean, they encompass the entire life of the student, basically. So this is being implemented from the federal level by the CDC across all 50 states in public education. The American Federation of Teachers, the other powerful teachers union, has adapted to implement this policy. There is, let's see, through this website, you can see from the American Federation of Teachers, all children thriving, a new purpose for education. And they talk about this program being implemented. I'm going to skip just reading all of this just because of time. I want to leave some time for discussion. So this SEL program and CASEL, they're all tied in together, includes a comprehensive sexuality and education program, CSE, and the comprehensive sex education that works, offered by Planned Parenthood. So it's in partnership with them, provides a lesson-based approach to SEL with academic integration for health sex education. It includes programming for grades 6 to 8, explicit CSE textbooks, demonstrates pornographic photos and sexual acts and description portrayed by children. If you just open some of these textbooks, it is disgusting what is being portrayed. Critical theory and all its sub-branches are also part of SEL. The World Economic Forum, the Great Reset. You can go to this website, New Vision for Education, SEL. It's all in partnership. Penn State University talks about SEL with increased awareness of systems that perpetuate unconscious bias, ableism, white supremacy comes the opportunity to dismantle, rebuild, and restore our collective humanity. So this Glenn Beck program from last week, it's a TV program that he does weekly. There's a Rumble and YouTube link to it. Talks about a lot of this stuff. It goes in much more detail. And I would say it's TV mature. Don't let your kids see it. But it's absolutely abhorring what it'll show you. I would say it's worth watching though. This is just last week, April 27th. Biden is on record as saying they're not somebody else's children. They're like yours when you're in the classroom. Okay. John Dewey. If you know anything about John Dewey, he's kind of the father of American public education. He would approve of everything that's happening right now. And he talks about how the high literacy rate was a problem. And we need to dumb down children, basically. I would recommend this book, Crimes of the Educators. I have not actually read it. I've read a lot about it, though. So you might look that up. Talks about the roots of American education, public education. So, solutions. Abolish the Department of Education. Good luck with that. Bring back everything to local control. To much surprise of many people in our society, the Department of Education is fairly new. It was created in 1979. And schools have only gotten worse since then. And And we've spent much more money since then than prior. So, you know, basically what we're doing is sending all our money up to DC. They're paying all these bureaucrats these high salaries and then sending some of the money back to us with strings attached. So how anybody can defend that, I don't understand. But there's some great reading that Kevin recommended. The Necessity of Christian Schools by J. Gresham mentioned. His testimony before the House and Senate Committee on the proposed Department of Education in 1926. They are very prophetic. And that's 100 years ago. So Christian schools, make sure you do your homework. Because the Association of Christian Schools International, which is the accrediting institution for Christian schools, has now partnered with Unified. It's by Walter Strickland, who is the kind of co-author of Resolution 9 from the Southern Baptist Convention when they adopted critical race theory as a teaching tool. Is that right? Yeah. So this accreditation, Christian school accreditation organization, national, is now partnering with Unified on all of this. Ben Lippen is a member of this organization. I'm not saying Ben Lippen is teaching critical race theory, I don't know, but it's only a matter of time. You let the demon in the door, that's what's going to happen. Allie's Best Stucky has a great YouTube show from the Blaze on this. So I would recommend reading that or watching that. So alternative education methods, homeschooling, co-ops, online Christian schooling academies. These are some that I know of very well, and they are excellent educational outlets. There's Classical Conversations, which our children do. Freedom Project Academy, which my nephews did. It's an online school where they actually have classes, live classes. Logos School, Liberty University Online Academy. Hillsdale College has a couple of options there for K through 12. There's some helpful resources to research some other options. The Public School Exit, Christian Education Initiative, and the Old Schoolhouse. So if you want to actively engage, if public education is all you have for your children at this point, which I understand that's the situation with some families, show up for meetings, read what is taught out loud at the meetings, because that really exposes a lot of people. You've seen a lot of videos of that the last year or so. Considering lawyering up, if that's where you want to go. Run for school board and public office. Get churches to start speaking out about this stuff. How in the world do we do that? We can discuss that. We're running out of time. Finally, get your kids out of public schools. That's the only answer, because the public schools are doing exactly what they were created to do.